Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. In today's video, we are going to be creating part 2 of this monthly and annual budget tracker template in Google Sheets. If you haven't seen part 1, I will leave a link in the description box so you can go ahead and check it out. Essentially what we created in part 1 is the monthly tracking area. We have the monthly tab, which is where you would add in your expected and actual expenses for the month. So you'll plan your budget here and then you use the same area to track your actual expenses and your income. We only have January through March in this template, but to create a new month, all you need to do is click on the tab. Any of the monthly tabs would work. Click on duplicate. Once you have that duplicate created, rename it. I'm going to call this April, which is the next month. And then I'll change the dates here. So this says March, double click, select April. So now what I can do is go to my different areas. So for my income, I can change the actual, which might change significantly month to month. And I can adjust the expected if I think there are things that need to be adjusted. So if you feel like your budget is going to change for a certain area, you can adjust it. But for the actual values, you definitely want to make sure that you are capturing what has been entered for that month. All right, so that is a brief summary of what we did for the monthly area. Now for the annual summary, I'll give you a quick overview and then we'll jump right into creating it. So this top area is an overview, so you can see the total income you have earned to date. So January through April, because those are the only tabs we have entered. Your leftover income, fixed expenses, variable expenses, debt, and savings. So these are totals for all the categories for what you have entered in this template from January to April. What's nice about this template is that if I were to create another tab and name it May, the numbers for May would automatically show up here. So it dynamically adjusts to new monthly entry. So let me show you what that looks like. Create a new tab, just duplicate this one, call this May and change the dates here to May. All right, so May 1st. And then if we go here, you can see now we have an entry for May for all of the different categories for income, expenses, etc. But what you notice is that it's identical for March, April, and May, and that's because all I did was duplicate it. So now if I were to go back here and make some changes, so let's just delete some of the income for May and just to make quick changes so we can see what the difference looks like in the annual summary. So now when you go here, you can see that we have May looking much different because we deleted some of the entries. So this area will adapt automatically to the tab as long as the name here matches the name of the tab. So the way the formula is written is to recognize the name of the tab and cross match it with the names here. If there's a match, what it's going to do is it will pull the amount entered for income, the different subcategories, expenses, different subcategories, etc. So that's how it works. And of course, we'll create all of this from scratch. This is just an overview so you know what we're going to be creating. The table area has two sections. This section is a summary. It has all the subcategories for income and the total amounts for the entire year we have entered to date. So for example, paycheck 1 for the 100 is a sum of all the paycheck ones that we have gotten from January all the way through May. Same thing for freelance work, rental income, etc. So that way you can see all of the different sources of income for the months that you've entered and then for the entire year. And the same applies to the rest of the tables. They're basically identical, following the same color theme that we use for the monthly area for the different categories. And they all work the same. And in this section, we have all our charts organized by category. So income, fixed expenses, variable expenses, etc. You have the breakdown of income similar to what we have here. It's essentially the visual representation of this table. So if you are more of a visual person and you want to see what the breakdown looks like, here's what it is. And this line chart represents the table. So that is what we're going to be creating today. Now I'm going to take you back to the checklist. And here is what we covered in the previous tutorial. Again, I will leave a link to that tutorial just in case you haven't checked it out because it's essential to watch that video before trying to create the annual summary tab. All right, so the first thing we're going to do in today's tutorial is to create the outline for the graphs and the charts and the tables. We'll start by adding a new sheet and rename this annual summary 2. And then I'm going to clean it up, and this is something I normally do with all my sheets. And what that means is that I select the entire range, change the font to what I like, and change the alignments. And then what I like to do next is remove the excess rows and columns. So if we go back here to the example, you see that everything after R has been removed. And here, everything after 100 has been removed. So we'll do the same thing here. So remove everything from S all the way down to Z. Delete. And let's go down to 100. So everything from 100 all the way down. Delete. Select all the rows at once. Right click. Change it to 30. Select the first column, column A. Last column R, right click, make that 30. Back to the example. We have two main sections, right? We have this section here, and then we have this main section here. So this section has 3 columns, and this has 12 columns. We'll start by creating the wider column, resize to 250. And here are the narrow columns. So select both of them at the same time, resize, make that 125. And then this is going to be the space between the two sections. So right click, we'll make that 30. And then for these ones, we're going to leave them at 100. Back here, now we can go ahead and start creating our rectangle. So first rectangle is going to go from row 2 to row 4, and it's going to cover the entire section. And then the second one will go from F all the way down to Q. So let's do that. Start from here. So 2 to 4, B all the way through D. Put a border around that. So click on borders, change to the border color you want to use. I'm using this dark gray. Put a border around it. I also want to put a vertical border in between the two sections. Select this area right here. So this is 1/2 of the rectangle. Go to borders and do right border so that this is one section and this is one section. All right. And then we'll do the upper part of the next section, which is the same size from row 2 to 4 all the way to column Q. Put our border around it. I'm going to place background colors here. So go ahead and use whatever colors you want. I am going to be using colors from my color palette like I did before. Next, we're going to add the values that go above the numbers here. So remember, this is the cumulative income, fixed expenses, variable expenses, etc. And this is the leftover. So we're getting this number by subtracting the sum of all of the expenses from the income. Before we add any of the formulas, all we're doing now is just copying this. So I'll give you a second if you want to go ahead and type in at the top of your template these different headers. I'm copying it to save time, and I'm just going to go ahead and paste them here. We're going to make some slight adjustments. So I'm changing the size just a little bit smaller than the default, and then income is fine. For the leftover section, select the 2 cells, so C and D, merge that. So here's where your text is going to go leftover. And then we're going to do the same thing for these guys. Essentially what we do is merge the first 2 cells, skip 1, merge the first 2 cells, skip 1, etc. So here's what that looks like. So for F and G, where it says fixed expenses, we're going to merge that. All right, and then skip this cell. We'll go to the next one. For variable expenses, it's going to be column I and J, merge, skip K. For debt, it's going to be L and M, merge, skip N. And then for savings, is going to be cell O and P, merge that. And then merge the area where the formula is going to go. The formula is going to go in this area right here. So go ahead and select these 2 cells, merge, select these 4, merge. Essentially, we're just merging the area underneath the text so that we can add our formulas there. Okay. And then select these 2 cells, and we're going to make the text bigger. It's fine if you decide to do this later on when we put the formula, so you get a sense of what the numbers look like. I'm just going to change them now to 24 and make them bold. And once I put in the formulas, I can reassess and decide to maybe decrease the size or increase the size depending on how much space the numbers take. All right, so this section is essentially done. Next, we're going to create the section right here. We have 2 rectangles. The first one goes from row 6 to 17. It has 3 columns. And the next one goes from F all the way to Q. Let's do that next. So we'll start by leaving this blank, 6 to 17, put a border around it. Here's going to be a header area, so merge that, put a border around it. Do the same for here, 6 to 17, put a border around that. This is going to be a header area, merge that, put a border around it as well. Let's go back to our example. We have a subheader area. This is where the labels for the different columns are going to go. So we have subcategory, which is referring to these items here, total amount and percentage. And then here we have January all the way through December. And of course, don't forget to add the header here for income and the header here for income. So let's do that next. So we'll type income. Here's also going to be income. All right. And this is the subheader area. And actually what we're going to do is also create a border around it. Do the same for this section here. Create a border around it. We have subcategory, amount, and percentage. Here's going to be January all the way through December. What I like to do is start with the first month, which is January. So type in January. And instead of typing the rest of the months, what I'm going to do is select January and just drag it all the way down. So we have January through December. And the only thing we have to do is just work on the borders because it pulled the border from here for each of the cells. I'm just going to go back there and change it to how it was before. And then we're going to add colors to our template. Go ahead and add whatever colors you want. I'm going to be using colors from my color palette, and I'm going to be matching the colors I have for income with what I use for income in the monthly summary, as well as what I use for income in the setup tab. All right, so here's what it looks like so far. Next, I'm going to create internal borders. So selecting the internal part of the table, back to borders and horizontal borders. I don't want this harsh dark color, so I'm going to change it to this lighter color and change the style to the dotted line. I'm going to do the same for this area. Select the entire range inside the table, go to borders, click on horizontal borders, and apply that same style here. All right, so this is the table for the income. For the fixed expense and the variable expense, we have longer tables. So we're doing the same thing in the summary tab, making sure we're accommodating for more examples in these categories. Debt and savings are shorter tables. Even though I have created shorter tables here, you can adjust it based on your specific needs. So the same thing we did with the setup tab, where you can see that we have really long tables to account for different lengths based on different use cases. You can do the same for your annual summary. Before we start adjusting the length for the tables with the longer examples, we need to create the structure. So now I'm going to copy this, skip row 18, go to 19 and paste it. Change this to fixed expenses. Same thing goes for here. Change the colors to whatever colors you have assigned for fixed expenses. Now we can add more rows for fixed expenses. I'm selecting 22 to 29 because it fits nicely inside the space. Right click and insert 8 rows. All right. And here's what it looks like with more rows. And if you need more, do the same thing. Just select anywhere inside the table, right click and add more rows. All right, so this should be okay for now. I'm going to use this exact same structure for variable expenses. Copy it. I'm going to skip row 39 and paste it right here. Change this to variable expenses and change the name right here as well. And then change the color to the assigned color for that category. For the last two categories, I'm going to copy the structure I have for income. Scroll down, so I'm skipping row 60. And paste. So this is going to be debt. Change the header here as well. Change the colors to match what you have assigned to that category. And then paste it one more time. Change the header to savings. And then change the color to the color you have assigned for that category. So back in the example, we're done with this area here with all the tables. Now we're going to start working on the area for the graphs. All right, so the numbers for the rows are not going to be exactly the same because of the rows adjustments that I made here. I didn't make it exactly the same as what it is here. So don't worry about that. Wherever your table ends, the next row is going to be blank, and then you start adding your sections for your charts and your graphs. So the first section is going to be 3 columns and 2 rows. So we have a header area and the section where the graph goes. Back here, leave 1 row blank, and we'll start adding the area for the charts here. Here's where the header is going to go. Here's where the chart's going to go. All right. We're going to need to adjust the row size. But before that, let's add a border around it. And then we're going to do the same thing we do with our header. Select the entire area, merge, and add a border around it. Now we need to adjust the height for the chart area. So to do this, select that entire row, right click, and resize it 300. Select this entire area, merge. And then we'll do the same thing here. Select the entire range, merge, add a border around it. Do the same for the body area where the chart's going to go, merge, and add a border around it. Go all the way back up here, copy these 2 headers because this section right here is going to represent the values from the tables in income. So just click here and paste it. So now we have the same header for income here and the same header for income here. And then you can add whatever colors you want. If you want to leave it white, you can. What I'm doing, however, is adding background color to both sections for the charts. And here is what it looks like. Now that I have this section done, what I'm going to do is copy and paste it for the rest of the sections and change the headers just like we did for the table. I'm going to select the row number. So where this number is, select both tables from here. So it selects everything. Then I'm going to copy it, skip 1 row and paste it right here. All right. And the reason why I'm doing this is because I want to make sure that it copies the actual height of the row when I paste it over here. So then we can repeat this 3 more times for the rest of the categories. If you have any leftover rows, just go ahead and delete them. All right, so here's for income. The next one is going to be for our fixed expenses. So go back up here, copy the headers and paste it here, and then repeat the same for the rest of them. All right, I'm going to make this smaller so you can see what it looks like. So you can see we have our tables here for all our categories: income, fixed expenses, variable expenses, debt, and savings. And then now we have our chart area with the same categories. So we have income, fixed expenses, variable expenses, debt, and savings. So back here, we're done with the outline. So let's cross it off. Next, we're going to add our formulas to the annual summary tab. Back in our example tab, we have formulas in many different sections. We have formulas here, and this formula depends on the total amount here. We also have formulas here, and these are pulling in the different amounts from the different months. These amounts here are the sum of these amounts here. Here, we need to pull in the list of subcategories for each category. Right here is the formula, and this formula is essentially filtering in the list of subcategories that we have put in our setup tab. All right. So again, if you have made your template, try to make sure that if you're going to be using this formulas the way it is written, that your setup tab is also set up the exact same way my setup tab is. If it's not, that's fine. All you need to do is adjust the range. But if you don't want to bother with adjusting the range, make sure that your setup tab is exactly as mine. So what it's doing is looking at this category name, and then it's filtering the names of the subcategories within that category. But to be honest, if you don't want to use a formula, that's also fine. All we need to do is get the list from the setup tab right here into our table. So if you want to copy and paste them, feel free to do so. All right, so my formula is here, and the only thing I'm going to do to adjust this formula is I want it to reference this setup tab too, not this one. This is the one that we created for this tutorial. So just add in 2 next to setup name. If your setup tab name is already called setup, then you don't need to change anything. All right, so I'm making sure I've changed it in all the areas and hit enter. And here I have my list. Again, remember that you don't have to do this. You just can go ahead and copy and paste it from your list, and it should work the exact same way. All right, so now that we have this formula working here, what's nice about it is that I'm just going to copy the formula. I'm copying this entire cell, and I'm going to paste the formula right here under the subcategory for fixed expenses. So once I paste it here, you can see that it pulls in the correct subcategories for fixed expenses. And if I double click in formula here, you can see now it's referencing this cell itself. So it's adapted itself to the category name location here. So we can just repeat the same steps for this. I'm just pasting it. Okay, the same thing. It's pulling for variable expenses, pulling for debt, and the last one will be for savings. Okay, next we want to pull in the total amounts for each of them. But in order to calculate the total amount for paycheck for the months we have entered, we need to pull in the amount for the individual months. So this is a sum of all the values entered here. We're going to skip these 2 sections. We'll come back when we've worked on the formula in this section. For this section, here's what the formula looks like. It's a filter formula, but it's a special filter formula because it uses this indirect function. And what this indirect function is going to do is that it's looking at F7. So F7 has the name January. It's then going to look for the tab name January, and within that tab name, it's going to look through the range C23 to C36, okay? And it's going to look for the name, subcategory name paycheck. Once it finds that, it's going to pull in the amounts for subcategory paycheck for January. If we go to our January tab, you can see that the range we had in our formula, that's the range we have here, from C23 to C36, all right? We have our subcategory names. And here is where we have our values, E23 to E36. All right, so that's exactly how the formula works. It's looking at the tab name, okay, January. That's the tab name here. It's going to go in January. It's going to look for B8, all right, the value here in B8 paycheck 1. It's going to look for this value in the range C23 to C36. Once it finds it, it's going to pull the amount for that subcategory. All right, so I hope that makes sense. Let's copy this formula here. All right, and go back to our template. So here's where we're going to place the formula. We're going to paste the formula, and then we'll make changes if necessary. All right, so I have 1750 here, but I still want to double check the formula to make sure it's referencing the correct cells. So if I double click, here's the formula. It is reading January, which is correct, and B8, which is the first subcategory example here, which is correct. So now that we know the formula works, we're going to repeat the same steps for the rest of the months. So here's how we're going to do it. All right, so here's the formula one more time. We're going to copy the formula from here, and we're going to paste it in February. But before we hit enter, we want to make sure that it's referencing the name February. So F7 is January, February is in G7. So we want to change this from F to G. All right, so change it here and change it here. All right, so now you can see G7 is highlighting February. So we can go ahead and hit enter. Now we're going to do the same thing for March. Paste the formula, change it from F7 to H, because that's where March is, H7. Hit enter. As you can already see, the amount for March is different, so it's reflecting that. And then just keep going. The next will be April. All we're doing is just changing the location of the column. So April is in column I. All right. Do the same thing here. Enter. And then repeat the steps until you have formulas in the first cell for the rest of the month. So copy and paste the formula and adjust the location of the month for the rest of the months. All right. So I've entered formulas for the rest of the cells, as you can see here. So now we only have the first subcategory, which is paycheck. We need to copy this formula and paste it here so it pulls in the rest of the subcategories. So what we're going to do, I'll make this smaller so I can copy the entire range. All right, so just make sure you have formulas in every single month. So now you can copy it and select the entire range. Right click, paste special, formula only. Now every single area that has a subcategory would show up like this. The rest of them are blank because we don't have tabs for June through December. Some areas here in May are blank because we actually deleted the amount in that month. One final thing we need to do is to change the formatting. Select the entire range and add your currency. I'm using the currency symbol here, and here are different formats. You can customize it further by going to custom currency, where you can type in a different country's currency and apply it to your range. Next, we're going to pull in the formula that goes here. This is a sum formula. It's essentially adding up all the values that we've entered for January through December for paycheck 1. The only additional thing that I have here is that if B8, which is the subcategory name, is blank, I want it to be blank. All right. So right now there is a formula here, but it's blank because there's nothing here. So that's why I like this if conditions, is that it's going to keep your areas clean when there are no values to filter into that area. So that's all it is. Other than that, it's a very simple sum formula. We're adding all the values for all of the months in that range. So you can copy the formula or feel free to use a simple sum formula to add up the values here. But here's the formula just in case you want to add the if condition to your own formula. Here's what it looks like. Now we can go ahead and copy this. All right, so we're copying it right here and selecting the entire range. We're going to right click, paste formula only. All right, so as you can see, even here we have a formula, but because this is blank, nothing shows up here. And the final one is a simple percentage. All it's doing is calculating the percentage of this value relative to the total amount here. And I do have that if condition as well, just to keep things clean. But you can see here, it's a very straightforward C8, which is the amount here, divided by the sum of everything in this range. So that's all the percentage formula is. So you feel free to type in your own percentage formula, which is this divided by the sum of this, or you can use mine, which has the blank condition for B8. All right, here's what it looks like. And I'm going to hit enter and then double check to make sure it is referencing the correct range. So B8 is correct. C8 to C17 is correct. So that's the correct range for all the amounts in this section. And C8 is correct, referencing the first amount here. So it's working the way it's supposed to. Now I can copy it from here, select the entire range, right click, paste formula only. Select that entire range, click on percent, and then you can keep it in 2 decimal places, or you can change it by increasing the decimal places or decreasing the decimal places. Now that we have this done, we can then add our formula here, which is the sum of this, and it's a simple sum formula. So that will be equals sum, and select this entire range, enter, and we have 18,520, which should be exactly what we have here. All right, so this part is done. What's nice about this is that we're going to repeat the same steps for the rest of the ranges. Before I do that, let's remove our grid lines. So I'm going to go to view grid lines because we really don't need it anymore. Let's work on the fixed expenses next, and then I'll speed things up because the rest of the steps are pretty repetitive. So here's the formula. We're going to copy directly from here. We're going to paste the formula here, but this formula needs to be adjusted. This range is the range for the income. We need to change it to the range for fixed expenses. So remember, this range is where the amounts are, and this range is where the values are. So we're going to go back to our monthly template and look for the range for our fixed expenses for the list of subcategories, and then go here and pull in the actual values. So let's go to January. Here is the range right here for the subcategory name. We're going to change C23 to C36. We're going to change that to H13 to H36, this range right here. So let's do that first. This goes H13 to H36. All right. And then we're going to go back. We need to change the location of the values. The value will be the same range, so the same rows, but a different column. So it's going to be, instead of H13 to H36, it's going to be J13 to J36. So go back here, double click. So here we have H13 to H36. Here is going to be J13 to J36. All right. And then we need to change 2 more things. We need to change B8 to B21. B8 is the first value for income. We want to make sure that it's referencing the first value for fixed expenses. So change B8 to B21. All right, now you can see it's referencing the first subcategory. change it here as well, B21. And then finally, we're going to change F7. So F7 says January. To be honest, you don't really need to change it, but I want to keep the formula contained within this space. So I'm going to change it from F7 to F20. All right. So F7 is what January is for income. I'm going to change it to F20. But the formula should still work. Like I said, I'm just trying to make sure it makes sense just in case I make changes in the future, to F20 and hit enter. Now you can see that it says our rent / mortgage for January is $870. So let's go to that month and verify. So rent mortgage is $870. So that's correct. If we change this to 800 and we go back here to our annual summary, it changes to 800. So the formula works the way it's supposed to. So now the same thing we did before, copy the formula from January, right? And then go to February, paste the formula here. But instead of leaving it at F20, we're going to change it to G20 because that's where February is. So change it to G20 here. Now it references February. And when we hit enter, it's going to pull in the amounts that we have entered for our rent mortgage for February. All right. And if we go back and double check, you can see that rent mortgage for February is $900. So the formula is working exactly the way it's supposed to. So now you're going to repeat the same steps, paste the formula here, change the column number to match where the name of the month is. So this would be H20. All right. Hit enter and then do the same for the rest of the months. All right, so I have entered all the formulas for the rest of the months in this section. All right, so make sure you do the same. Next, we're going to copy this range because this range you have all the formulas. Copy that. Select the entire range, right click, paste special, formula only. All right, and then now you can see it pulls in the values for the rest of the subcategories for months January through May because those are the only months we have tabs for in this template. And then now what I'm going to do is do the same thing, work in the formatting, change it to my currency format. So it looks just like this. And then we'll do the same thing we did here for the total amounts and the percentage. Copy this formula, all right, and paste it right here in this range. Because this formula is going to adapt to the correct ranges, we can just paste it here. So formula only. So you can see that if we double click, it is selecting the right subcategory and it's selecting the right range for each of them. So this formula is adaptable, so we can copy it and paste it here. The formula for the percentage is somewhat adaptable. I'll show you what I mean by that. So if I were to copy this formula and paste it here, this percentage is slightly off because this section of the formula is locked with $sign. So when there's a $sign before and after a column, as you can see here, it's going to lock that range. So every time you copy and paste the formula, it would always reference that range without adapting to the cells in the new location. So all we need to do is make sure that the range here matches the range here. So instead of C to C17, it's still going to be column C, but it's going to be C21. All right, so it's going to be this new range here, C21 all the way down to C38. So change to C21 to C38 and hit enter. All right, so now you can see it's referencing the correct range, which is this range here. B21 is correct. And then C21 here is correct as well. So now we can copy this percentage number, select the entire percentage range, right click, formula only. All right, and then go ahead and adjust the formatting. So change it to percent. And adjust the decimal places if you need to. And then we can go ahead and add the formula here for the fixed expenses. It's going to be equals sum, and it's going to be this range, and hit enter. And here is what it looks like. Now for the rest of the table, it's going to be the exact same thing. Copy the formula from the previous table, paste it here, and then change the ranges. So you're going to change this range for the variable expense. Go to variable expenses in the January tab, and it's going to be this range here. M13 to M36, and then for the values is going to be O13 to O36. For the debt is going to be R13 to R22, and for the actual amount, T13 to T22, and then for the savings, R27 to R36. For the actual amount is going to be T27 to T36. I'm not going over the steps again because it's redundant. All you need to do is just copy the formula from here, change the range, adjust the locations for the different months, copy it and paste it all the way down, and then repeat the same steps for debt and for savings. All right, so for all of my categories, I have entered in the formulas and I have copied them all the way down to fit the entire range for each section. And then now I can add the sum of the variables. So just like we did for the fixed expenses, it's going to be equals sum tab, and then we'll go to the range for variable expenses. It's right here. So select that range, hit enter. For debt equals sum. Here's the range right here. Enter. And for savings, which is our last one, equals sum tab, and here's the range here. All right, so now we have our ranges here. For our leftover is going to be our income minus the sum of our different categories for spending. So that would be equals income, which is B3, minus open parentheses sum. All right, tab, and this is going to be the range for the sum. All right, so we'll just select this entire range, which is F3 to P4, close parentheses, hit enter. And if we go to our example, we have the exact same values. It's the same thing we have here. One thing I want to do is show you how to add the conditional formatting. It's the same thing we did when we created the monthly tab. So in our monthly tabs, we have the changes of colors based on the values in that cell. So we can do the same for here. All right, to do this, just make sure you're clicked in that cell. Go to conditional formatting. And for the cell, the formatting rule is going to be if the value is less than 0. If it's less than 0, we want the number, so not the background color, we want the number to be red. Before we click done, we're going to do add another rule because we want to apply another rule, which is green if it is greater than 0. So less than 0, we can do actually greater than or equal to 0. Change the color to green and click done. The other conditional formatting we're going to add is to highlight the highest and the lowest. So you can see here that the lowest percentage is 1.6, the highest percentage is 40% for paycheck 2. This is being done automatically by conditional formatting. Here's the formula. What it's doing is that it's going to look through this range, all right, and it's going to find the max and apply the conditional formatting. And the second one that does the exact same thing is going to apply the min and apply the formatting. So we'll do the one for max first. All right, I'll have the formula available for you on the screen. So all you need to do is apply it to this range right here. All right, click on add rule. So the correct range is selected. Now go to format rules, go to custom formula, paste the formula right here, and then change the color to whatever you want. So I'm going to use this green color and click done. All right, so you can see it shows up here. And then we're going to do the same thing. All right, here's the minimum formula. I'm just copying that, going back to the same area, clicking on that formula to add another rule. That's just a quick way to apply a different formula to the same range. So it's selecting the range that I want. Then I'm replacing this formula with the one for min. And I'm going to change the color to red. All right, and hit done. So here's what it looks like. And then we're going to just apply the same formula to the rest of them. So the only thing we're going to do is when we apply the formula to the next range, all right, like I'm going to do here, we're going to change the formula slightly. So let's say I want to apply the formula to this range. Select this entire range, click on add rule. All right, so this range is selected, which is correct. Go to custom formula is, what is this formula here? All right. And then just make sure that you adjust the location. So instead of C8, now we're going to do C21. Okay, because we're always starting with the location of the first cell. So the first cell here is C21. The first one was C8, which is why the original formula has C8. Now we're going to be working in this area, and it's going to start from C21. So change it from C8, all right, to C21. And then look through the formula. Anywhere you see 8, change that to 21. And then C17 is the end of the range for the table. So we're going to add the end of the range for this table, which is C37. So change it to 37 and hit enter and click done. So now you can see it's selecting the correct range right here. So I'm just going to change the color to this green color. All right. And then we'll do the same for minimum. All right. It's the exact same thing. Do add another rule, right? Because when we do add another rule, it's going to save the formula that we just copied, and it's going to now create another rule with the same range, which is what we want. So instead of max, we're going to change it to min. All right. So MIN instead of MAX. And then change the color to your red color. And here's what it looks like, and click done. So now we have our max 45.3% and our minimum at 1%. And then do the same for the rest of them. Adjust the range and adjust the subcategory location. Back to our checklist. We've done this. We added our formulas and conditional formatting formulas. Next, we're going to add our graphs and charts. The first one is our income pie chart, and it's based on the values here, these two values. So we're going to select this entire area, subcategory and total amount, so this entire area, and go to insert charts, click on that. And what's nice about this is that it is selecting the pie chart, which works for this type of data. So all we need to do now is just remove the things we don't need, which is the extra header, and then go to chart style, remove the background color and the border color. And the reason I like to do this is because the section we have created already has those things, so we don't really need it. All we need to do now is drag it into that space, make sure it fits correctly, and that's that. And then to save time, what we can do is just copy this chart, all right, and then paste it here. Paste it for actually every single section that has the pie chart. And then what we're going to do is adjust the range. So we'll start by adjusting the range for the next one, which is fixed expenses. So double click. So the range here is the one for income, B7 to C15. We're going to change that. So click on the select data range. And then now we're going to select the range for the fixed expenses, which is from B21 to C37. So once we select that and hit OK, it's going to automatically adjust to that range, just like it's done here. And then do the same for variable expenses. Double click to open it up. Go to the area for variable expenses, select that range. And as you can see, it has adjusted accordingly. Do the same for debts. Go to the range for debts, select the correct range, click OK. You can see it has adjusted. And do the last one, which is for savings. And then put in the right range for savings, click OK. And you can see that it has adjusted as well. For the last chart right here, let's go to our example. You can see that it is displaying here January through December, and then for each amount, it's showing us what the amount is for each month, right? Based on the table here. So it's pulling the names from here and pulling the amount from here for January through December, and it's representing that in the form of a chart. So that's what we're going to do next. So we're going to go here and do insert charts. So it's a blank slate. So we're going to add our ranges. Click on the insert data range. The first range we're going to apply would be this one right here, because we need to pull in the names. So just select everything from subcategory all the way to the end of the table. And then we're going to add another range. So click on add another range. And it's going to be this range here. So click and all the way down to the end of the table. I want to make sure everything in this table is selected, even the blank ones, so that as we add more months and values, the chart would adapt automatically. All right, so now we have our two ranges entered. This range for the names and this range for the values, and make sure that you have the names of the month selected as well. Click OK. And if we go to our graph, it's going to look something like this. This is not what we want. All right, so we're going to flip it. Go to the setup area, scroll all the way down until you see these options right here. The first one says switch rows and columns. That's what we want to do. We want January to December to be here. Click on that box, and we're going to change the chart style to the line. We're going to go to customize. And first thing I want to do is change the legend. I want it to be above at the top like this. All right. And then you can play around with how you want this displayed. So right now it's a line. All right. If you want it to be a circle, you can change it to circle, like, and then change the size to 7. So it looks like this. So the circles are not too big. You can change it to square, star, whatever you want. All right. So here's what it looks like. It's actually quite nice with stars. So maybe I'll leave it as star. Remove the background color, remove the border color, and then we're going to pull it all the way down back to where it's supposed to be, which is here. Just pull it in here and then stretch it all the way down. And here's what it looks like. So we have January through May, because those are the tabs we have represented here. And then now we can copy this just like we did before, copy charts. And I'm just going to paste it 4 more times. All right. And then we'll go back to each individual one and adjust the range. So start with the next one for fixed expenses. So right now it's reflecting the values or the ranges from income. So we'll go to the setup tab for that chart, and we're going to click on select data range. So instead of B17, we want the range to be this one, which is B20 to B37. And then we're going to change the second range right here. So just make sure you click in this box here so it highlights it and it changes this range. So now we're going to select this range right here for fixed expenses, January through December, and then click OK. When we go down to our chart, that now it has been adjusted, like so you can see rent, electricity, gym membership, etc. So we're going to repeat the same steps. I'll do one more. For variable expenses, double click, make sure you're in the setup area, click on data range. Let's take it all the way to the top where we have our variable expenses. Click the first one, select our variable expenses section. All right, here's the range. Click in the second one. And then here is where we'll select the entire range for the monthly entries and click OK. And when we get here, you can see it has adapted accordingly. And then follow the same steps to change the ranges for debt and for savings. All right, so here's what it looks like. You can see that for debt, we have the correct values showing up here. And for savings, we have this correct subcategory showing up here as well. If we go back to our example, you can see it's only slightly different because we're using a different style. So feel free to change the style to whatever works for you. But that is it, guys. That is the end of this tutorial. I'm going to go here and just double check in my checklist to make sure I'm not missing anything. So I'll check this off. And I did mention this in the first tutorial, and that is that I do have a Patreon. So if you are subscribed to my Patreon, any template that I release every month, and I do tend to release 1 or 2 templates a month depending on the types of tutorials that I create, you will get a free copy of that template. That way you get the template already made with all the formulas in the right place. So if you want to support my channel, that's another way to do so. I'll leave the link to Patreon in the description box. The very last thing I want to do is show you the template that I have for sale. So of course you can get started with this template that I made, especially if you're just getting started with tracking your budget and your expenses. You can get started with this. But if you want something more robust and has a few more functionality, you can go ahead and purchase the template that I'm about to show you. All right, so here's what that template looks like. It comes with a summary tab. We have an annual table similar to what we created, but we also have a dedicated dashboard which has more summary tables, charts, and graphs. So you have a little bit more functionality available to you. And then you have the monthly sections already ready to go. In addition to having 7 categories available: income, savings, investment, debt, subscriptions. This version is easier to maintain because all you need to do is every time there's a new transaction, you add it to this table and it pulls it into this section automatically. And then all you're doing is reviewing the summary tables for the month, for the year, and reviewing your dashboard for the year, providing with a little bit more functionality if you want something a little bit more robust. So this is English US dollar. I also have it available in multiple currencies. If you don't see your currency, send me a message and let me know. I'll have the links for my shop listed in the description box, so you can go ahead and grab a copy. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.